Hello and welcome to Current Wave. I'm your host, Ayla Wayman, and in this podcast, we meander through our shared delusions and stumble into ethereal shit talking as we dive into the waves of the human experience. I'm so grateful to have you here. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope that you enjoy the ride. Okay, here we are. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Current Wave. I am feeling so open and tender this morning and excited to have Abigail Hines on. Abigail is a healing practitioner, medicine weaver, and vocalist. Abigail is an ancient soul and mystic at heart who loves creating spaces of magic. She works primarily with women, supporting them to come home to the sanctuary of their bodies and essence. Abigail is deeply connected to the animal realms and tends to them in life and death, spirit and form. As a weaver and artist, she creates practical and mystical creations that are alive with spirit and prayer, often working with the animals through creating drums, rattles, and feather wands. Revitalizing the wisdom of ancestral arts, she is deeply interested in returning ways of creation that are in honoring and harmonic reciprocity with creation, and so many other things. Hi, Abigail. Thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, we've been working toward this meeting for a little while, and I'm really happy that it landed and we're here. And I'm excited to kind of dive into aspects of your work. And I feel like, especially in this moment, everyone that I'm speaking with and communing with, I feel like we're really remembering how vast we are and how many different parts of us want to come forward, especially in these times. So it can feel so limiting in a way to just speak of certain aspects of who we are and the work or gifts that we share with the world. I'm excited to touch on some of the things that I've experienced you as bringing into being. So, yeah, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me. And I'm excited to get into some of it too.
Yeah.
And I love that so much. Yeah, honoring the vastness and multifaceted nature of our beings.
Yeah, it just feels like important and alive in me right now to kind of allow us to be so many things because that feels like the ultimate truth. Well, I first met you at Spirit Weavers several years ago, and we were actually in an ancestral food nourishment workshop together, and I was really struck by just your presence and your knowledge and your really clear relationship and reverence to life and death and that very inherent process. And I've been really exploring that myself and feeling very more and more and more connected to that and feeling the importance right now, especially. I think that collectively and in at least the United States, the culture here is so kind of death avoidant, or it's just not really brought in, and it's inevitable, it's vital. Like, death feeds life, death is so much a part of everything. And I feel like that knowledge and wisdom is just wanting to come forward more and more and more in big ways and in smaller ways. Like, I want to kind of get into a workshop that you led where there can be so much like life in death and celebration and levity and like play and exploration. And so yeah, then the next year after we had first met, ended up honestly kind of randomly. I hadn't signed up for your workshop previously, but then I ended up at your workshop that was called Squirrel to Soup. And it was so potent. Like, it was my favorite part of Spirit Weavers that year. Like, it really it really struck a chord in me and really just felt so natural. It felt so good to like be in this reverence of death and creation space with
Mm.
women in nature, and in there was just like a really sacred simplicity of it and a levity of like, oh yeah, this is just what we're doing. We're going to process a squirrel and make soup, which sounds really funny in a way, but it was just so beautiful. And I guess my first question is, how did that workshop come to mind? How did that emerge?
Yeah, I love it. Just like, yeah, just hearing the name right now, I'm feeling so much the spirit of the squirrel in it, in the squirrel
Yeah.
to soup. Like, there's just something really playful there.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it came to be, so I had been processing birds for a long time. So my journey with processing animal really began with the winged ones. I just started finding all of these birds that were already dead. A lot of times that had been hit by cars, like on the side of the road. Sometimes other places though, just out in the forest or yeah, in different ways. And so I had a very deep relationship with the birds and with tending to them after their death process and processing their bodies. And often when it felt right to preserve their wings or maybe their talons or um yeah, different parts of them and make medicine with them, or preserve them in this way where their spirit was still intact and like in relationship. But I hadn't ever processed like a four-legged or a furry animal creature. I remember one time actually I found a squirrel in the road and I felt called to pick it up, but it ended up sitting in my freezer for like 2 years because I didn't know how to process them. It is a bit different. I was also mostly processing these birds like more gently and more not like their whole body and not eating them. So, yeah, then I was living on a farm in Washington and this 88-acre land, and they had cows and they had sheep. And when I was on that land, I started to learn parts of the process of processing larger animals and processing the furry friends, but it wasn't the full start to finish. It was like I was working on tanning a hide with my friend, and I did a little bit of processing a sheep. It was actually a really special sheep on the land that had died, but it wasn't, we couldn't harvest the meat. It had gone bad, so it wasn't that full process. So I had these little bits and pieces, but had never processed a full animal start to finish. And then one winter, I was living on a really small homestead in Oregon, and I found this squirrel on the side of the road. And I was already in this, yeah, it was very common for me to pick up animals on the side of the road or, stop for animals and move them and essentially help death doula them. So yeah, there was this squirrel and I ended up taking the squirrel home with me and I felt called to process the squirrel. And I felt this like initiation open and I was like, I think I can do this. I think I can go for it. And there was something about the squirrel because they were so small that it felt really approachable. I was in like a little um kind of RV and I was like, I think I can do this. And there were some pieces I had to look up online, some little bits, but I ended up on my own processing this whole squirrel and felt the call to, also process the organs and the meat. And I made this nourishing soup for myself and this broth. And yeah, it was such a beautiful initiation, so empowering and so profound as well. That was the first time that I had processed an animal that I did the whole thing myself and then ate it.
Wow.
And it was so profound to have like felt and communed with the spirit of this being and then to take them into my body. It was like a whole other level of connection. Yeah, and that was how it was birthed. It was like squirrel to soup. And then a week later, I actually found a deer on the side of the road. I was living in a bit of a rural place where there were actually a lot of animals that got hit on that road because it was kind of like still a busy road, but right on the edge of the forest. So yeah, a week later, I found a full mama deer, and they ended up processing her whole body by myself in a multi-day ceremony. And that was a very big initiation. But I felt like the squirrel opened me to that. Like I wouldn't have been able to do that or feel confident doing that unless I'd had that experience with the sweet little squirrel friend. So I really, yeah, I felt that as an offering, to teach and to share as this like approachable way to start, that almost anyone, even if someone's living in a little apartment, they could process their own little squirrel. Yeah.
Yeah. So beautiful. Thank you for sharing that arc and that journey and the birds coming to you first, the winged ones. And yeah, I love that you're speaking to this as this initiation and the squirrel being that invitation into something new. And I think you brought that to all of us. And I think everyone that was at that workshop was initiated into something new. And it really was deeply empowering and simple. Like there's so many different words that come to me when I'm thinking about it and feeling into that. And I think that that is so much of like what feels distant and lost. Like we are really disconnected from the animals and the beings that we're consuming and that we're relating to in all of these ways. And the culture here is so segmented. And of course, like death feels distant and far away if we're not processing our own food. We're not living on, most people are not living in rural places and having these experiences of death and of life and of this relationship that is ever moving and ever evolving, and we're just kind of going to the store and buying chicken, buying beef, buying whatever we're eating, and having no relationship to the spirit of that animal. And yeah, I was a vegetarian until I was in my like early 20s because I didn't like the taste of meat, and I also just had such an aversion to like eating beings that felt really, there was something there that did not feel good to me. And then I really needed that nourishment and do eat meat now, but it's like that relationship feels so potent and so sacred. And being able to, as you said, process the squirrel and take that into your body and have that relationship and that communion and that reverence. And also, just there's something so tactical about it. It really grounds you. It's a deeply grounding, rooting, enlivening practice. And it just really creates a right relationship with the land and with the animals. And I think that's something I'm deeply craving more and more and more. And I think we all are, because that's like our way that our ancestors were for so long. It's so recent that we've been separated from these processes. And I think they live in us. And I think, there's this part of the world and culture that's going in completely the opposite direction right now. And I think there's a deep craving for the old ways and the traditional ways and the ancestral ways of all of our cultures and all of the people that we come from. And so this feels like such a beautiful portal into that. And I'm just really, really grateful for this wisdom that you hold and that you're exploring and that you've shared with me and the other women who have encountered you in this way. But yeah, I would love to hear if you have any other like thoughts or feelings about that and this relationship to life and death.
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely, I feel like the Spirit Weaver's container was so special for this because, yeah, it felt so ancient. It was like, wow, this circle of women, we're gathering to
Yeah.
honor this being and honor this process to create nourishment for our bodies. And I learned that, yeah, in many traditional cultures, it would be the women who would process the animals. And that's kind of how, I was surprised, especially more when I started moving to processing animals for nourishment, and for food. But I was surprised at how natural it felt. Like it really did feel like this ancestral memory inside of me of like, this is natural. This is, yeah, there's something very connective and grounding about it. And it is, yeah, a lot of women who were in the class were at some point vegan or vegetarian. And so I think it was a deep healing for that. And I do think, I mean, one, there's so much rejecting of eating animals because of the way that animals are treated, because of factory farms and just really terrible suffering. That's not the way it's meant to be, that's really disturbing. But I do think, yeah, there's this kind of gap between this relationship of death and of nourishment and what we're eating. Of like you were saying, a lot of times is like you're buying meat in a plastic bag from the grocery store. People might not even know, right? And it's like a chicken wing. It's like they might not even know that's like actually, the arm of a wing of a bird that lived, or even like beef. Beef is a cow. There's these ways that we're so disconnected from it. And yeah, I think that's really harmful. That's really destructive. It's really unnatural
Yeah.
and can produce more of like a desensitization, more of a disconnection just inherently. And yeah, I really experience, I mean, so much like what I was saying with the birds. I was already in this way of being in ceremony with them, and tending to them on a spirit level. And then when I lived on this farm, it really kind of landed for me more deeply with they had these two cows that they were going to kill for their meat. And these were like the most free, happy cows that you could ever have, they're like just free on amazing organic pasture, living their best life. But the community ended up like hiring somebody to come onto the land to kill these cows and then sending them off to a butcher somewhere else to be processed. And it was really like this man came onto the land to kill these two cows, and it was literally like 10 minutes of him coming on and shooting them and then leaving. And it felt so sterile and disconnected. And the same then leaving, shipping away that meat somewhere for them to process. And I just really felt how, wow, this is supposed to be a ceremony. This is supposed to be, if we're going to kill a cow to eat, which, one cow could feed a family or a small village for a long time. It's so much abundance, so much nourishment. But that process, like killing a cow, killing a buffalo, even killing a sheep, anything, it's like it's meant to be this ceremony, this multi-day process that
Yeah.
requires presence and attunement and feeling and listening and, yeah, being in actual relationship with. And it's like we receive so much more from that. And yeah, it made me want to learn how to process animals in this way, to be able to offer that to any spaces that I'm in or communities I live in, or to just my family eventually. But I could really feel how like, that process of killing and processing animals is outsourced. It's like
Yeah.
most people aren't doing that in their communities and their lives. So there's these like, it's like industrial level that it has to happen on, right? And there's these people who their entire job is to kill the animals, or they're just doing this like all the time. I really felt for those people. I was like, wow, that's not how it's supposed to be, And yeah, so I think that because it's also, yeah, living in just a small community or a family, it's not like you're going to be killing animals all the time and like processing them all the time, It's like could be this thing of however many times a year, and it's this communion.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's so much that happens in that space, and there's so much that is transmitted in that space. And yeah, and just really honoring of, I think, the spirit of the animals as well, and honoring and like the gratitude for what that is and for taking of a life and that giving of a life. And there's so much depth and richness in that process that, yeah, we're often disconnected from.
Yeah. It's so beautiful. There's so many insights that you just brought in, and yeah, I'm really struck with that image of sort of people whose job is to be processing meat like continuously all of the time. And I just also really was feeling that, just like that thread of just how fast the modern world is moving and how much consumption and going. And yeah, like perhaps overconsumption of animal products, like overdoing everything, this excess. And to your point, like there's so much abundance and so much nourishment in just one animal. And there really is that potential for that animal to really feed a family, feed a village, feed a community. And it really feels so alive and apparent to me right now, just how much of like the pace at which we're moving is such a big part of this. And the loss of that ceremony, the loss of that communion. And it's heartbreaking in a way. And it's empowering because I feel, you know, that awareness building in me of, wow, okay, I'm even initiating this conversation with you because this is in my field. And yet I'm still separate from all of this. I'm not processing my own animals. I'm not living on a farm. And
Not either right now.
and like that's okay. Like this is the modern world. We can't all be homesteaders. And perhaps that's not everyone's path. And yet, I feel like this really pivotal moment of being on the planet as the old systems are crumbling, thank goodness, we have opportunities, I think, in big and small ways to reharmonize and like create something new. And it just feels like the more conversations we have and the more ancestral wisdom we bring forward, that can at least be part of the conversation or part of smaller conversations or inspire a small community to do things differently. And like that's exciting to me. Like, yes,
Yeah.
the way things are going have been moving has been intense. And I'm actually someone who's optimistic about the future and where we're going because I feel the rising of everyone's energy and this collective, like, yeah, this isn't working. So, what do we actually want to create? And this feels like a really potent piece of that. Like our
Yeah.
food, our relationship to life and death and ceremony, like that piece is so big because even if you're buying meat, from the grocery store, like even just saying a prayer and slowing down and like cooking that meat with intention and slowness and like remembering, as you said, like beef is a cow. Like we're so separate with the names that we call meat, with everything. It's just like very abstract and different. I'm sure there's children who have no idea. Like they would see a picture of like a steak and a picture of a cow and not realize that that was the same thing.
Yeah.
So,
Totally. Yeah,
yeah.
I agree too. I feel like, yeah, the fact that we're having these conversations, that there are people who are doing these things, and that it's like we know in our hearts, like what is right relationship and what
Yeah.
that looks like, and that desire, and yeah, holding that vision. It is inevitably changing. Like it's already shifting, just that we're aware. I mean, it's just dependent on where I'm living and what's available. But like last year where I was living, there were tons of pheasants that got hit by cars that I would find. And I was eating pheasants all the time. And I definitely very much intend to offer that as part of just my medicine, my gifts to when I am living on land and yeah, living in space where that's possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel that we're finding our way back to these right
Yeah.
relationships.
I think we are. And I love what you said. Like, we can really feel that in our heart. That resonance is already there because it really is that remembering of that right relationship, of that sacredness and that ceremony and that reciprocity. And yeah, it feels really good to be in that energy, even just talking about it. And you can just feel it in your cells, like, yeah, okay, that's a thread to follow. That's a guide. Yeah, I mean,
I'll
I
just
feel like,
say too,
please.
just one piece. I'm just feeling, yeah, that it's like the world that we live in, the way that things are structured, the systems and structures are set up as they are, and are kind of in this particular industrialized way, and are literally structured to work against what we're speaking about, And that's so there's just an inevitability for a lot of people in the way that they're able to live. That's like, this is what's available to me right now. I go to
Yeah.
the grocery store to get my meat. And that's, maybe, I mean, maybe somebody does know their farmer and can have that level of connection, but sometimes there's not. Yeah, there's no shame in that we're participating in that, in the way that it has been, and yet also very much holding the vision for the different way that we know for it to be, this ancient future vision of what is actually possible and what is actually harmonious and what is actually right relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for adding that in. That really resonates, and it is part the way that our modern world is set up, as you said. Like, there are these systems and structures, and we were born into them, and yeah, that's okay too. And just even I feel like just like feeling that and that awareness, I think, can be transformative in itself, of just recognizing another way and another path and holding that as a potential, or just, yeah, just that awareness is really that first step, it feels like. Yeah, I I want to kind of go back to the birds and the winged ones, and a little bit of this aspect of I have found in my own life and experience, especially with animals and my relationship with them, of it's one of my favorite ways to communicate with source, with spirit, with God, with the divine. Of I've found that it's a really beautiful way to strengthen intuition and to ask for messages and signs and really have a quick response and a clear response of paying attention. And it's been one of the tools that I've used to kind of cultivate that within myself. And yeah, a way like that really started coming into my field is asking for signs and working with certain animal spirits that were kind of just calling to me. Like, I was really working with coyote medicine for a long time and asking for very clear signs, and kind of like asking, okay, if this is meant to be the path, have a coyote like come very close to me, like really putting specific things into the field and having them happen. And that has really been a big part of my personal practice of developing my relationship to the world and to myself and my path.
Mm.
And I am curious about your relationship with this and how you have used animals as signs or guides. And also, similarly, last year, I was being guided very strongly. My mom has a ranch, and I would go on walks and I would just feel into where the feathers were, and I would like allow them to pull me to them. And I would find there were a lot of turkey, hawk, and owl feathers on the land. And I could just go find them by like listening to this subtle pull underneath. And then that also started to, I found several just already dead birds in that way too, like feeling this little tug and going down a certain path, and they would be there. And that's been a really special process for me. And I know that that's not like, I think that that's available to everyone. I know that that's not just my experience, but I think I've never heard anyone really talk about that. And I just have a curiosity around your experience with this aspect of being guided.
Yeah, I love that so much. I love hearing about that. I really feel like humans and animals have such a deep connection on many levels. And I think that kind of like, yeah, spirit level, mystical connection between humans and animals is so profound, is such a like innate part of ourselves, actually, but is something that we've often been severed from, or and I actually think that can go both ways, like because of just modern ways of living and disconnection from source, from nature, from our bodies, all of that. I think a lot of times humans can be, numb to that level of communication. And also, I think there's some animals who are not necessarily communicating with humans in that way anymore. There might be bears that are like, I'm not talking to those humans, and that like there's been a severance of that. But I think that humans and like wild animals, used to be in such closer relationship and communication. So yeah, I think that's so innate in us, that ability to communicate with the spirit of animals.
Yeah.
And I've experienced it so profoundly on my journey. I mean, my relationship with the animal realm is one of my deepest like realms of relationship, I would say. And I've specifically experienced a lot of spirit connections with animals that have been even initiatory. Like, at one point, I would call them animal medicine initiations, but, like, working with particular animals and animal medicine, in this communion in the spirit realm and also sometimes in the physical realm, that was actually this initiatory process bringing me into aspects of my own medicine, aspects of myself, like with the whales, for example. The whales is one of my deepest connections. And through communing with them on a spirit level, I experienced a lot of opening in my voice, opening in my song, them guiding me to connect with the waters in certain ways and receive transmissions, receive information, receive invitations and collaborations. And yeah, I think that there's so much richness there. And I do think, yeah, there's some people who are just more animal people, and even people who are drawn to like animal communications, like the animal communicators. But also, I do think it's innate in all humans. So yeah, I've experienced that a lot, and experienced, yeah, on multiple levels of that connection with animals, like sometimes just wild animal encounters, or very much like places I'm living, the animals in the wild around, like really feeling their spirit and their energy. And yeah, having encounters that would open something or transmit something. Yeah, and I also specifically through working with the birds, I feel like that opened a lot of my intuitive capacities, and like being able to tune in and communicate and listen in the spirit realm, because I would experience, yeah, essentially different birds like actually listening to. And this is when they were already passed, so they were dead in their physical form, but then I would experience their still being able to communicate with their spirit.
Mm.
And different birds having very different desires for the way they would want to be tended, and processed. And it's like some birds would be like, no, I don't want you to take any part of me, like, please bring me over to this tree, or bury me, or, and other birds, it was like, yes, please, take my wings. And then sometimes it'd be like so particular. It'd be like, take this little tuft of hair here. And then later I'd realize, oh, that wanted to be, go right here on this feather wand to be, but it was something I wouldn't have ever thought of myself.
Right.
So I came to, yeah, attune more deeply to my personal channel of
Yeah.
intuition, of direct communication with nature, with creation, with. And I think it can extend, to the trees or the plants.
Yeah.
And some people are more like plant people, right? They have that kind of opening more with the plants or with the rocks, or but it's like all of creation is actually singing, is communicating, is emanating, and we can, yeah, I think there's an opening of being able to commune and receive and, like you were saying, hear those messages or be in that communion.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that so much. I feel, yeah, there just is something as her speaking that feels so ancient and so innate to all of us. My hope is that more and more people remember that connection and that ability to hear like the deeper threads, the subtle threads of the plants and the rocks and our animal friends. My dog is actually right
Yeah.
just out of camera, but he's participating and listening to this conversation. And it just feels so beautiful. And thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually is just coming through with pets. Like I experienced that a lot with pets as well, and I think so many people do, right? People will have just such a bond with their pet and with their animal that's like even they yeah, that even could be some level of telepathic, but they might not necessarily even think of it that way or say that, but there's actually just this because animals can't technically like just speak like we do, but there's these other ways that they communicate and people can like communicate with them. And I think there's yeah, I've just experienced so I've been largely nomadic for a long period of my life, maybe like 15 years of my life, most of my adult life. And so I've lived so many different places and places where I haven't had my own pets yet because I haven't been stable for that. But I've lived in many places where there are animals and there are pets there that I end up bonding with or connecting with. And I feel like even with pets, with animals, there's like a way to connect with them on that spirit to spirit level.
Yeah.
Um, that's yeah, it's so of the heart,
Mm.
it feels like. And yeah, it's just it's very deep medicine. And I feel like yeah, there's something I experience animals really wanting to be connected in that way. Like sometimes this is I guess more in like mainstream culture, there can be this almost like dumbing down of animals, you know? Even I remember at some point I forget, but somebody was like made this comment and that was just joking around and that was like if you could really talk to animals, like ha 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 ha. Ha. It was just like that's so ridiculous. And even or even sometimes people might like to their pet be like, you know, speak, oh, they're saying this and this, but it's really kind of like dumb or you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa, there's actually what I've experienced and feel. There's like a whole realm of the animals and even of dogs and cats and pets that's like their soul. You know, it's like they are souls and they are connected to spirit and God. And when they're connected to in that way, they will express in that way. And I think sometimes, yeah, our modern world can like dumb down animals and not actually acknowledge them on that level but then also not be able to communicate with them on that level. But yeah, there's definitely this space of meeting that like is of the heart, is of the soul where I feel like even with yeah, with pets, with wild animals, with living animals, we can connect so deeply with them and really communicate with them.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel that too. And I really feel like, right, like there's just this idea as you're speaking to collectively that we can't do that or that it's limited or that they're, yeah, very simple and dumb. And I think that's this part of us that's really relying on such a limited aspect also of who we are and like what we're capable of. We're really opening to those subtle levels and having like even just the plants like tell us their name or what their uses are. For me, so much of that is experienced through sort of like a felt sense, which is not something that is like honored or cultivated in a lot of society. Like that's because that also doesn't necessarily have language. Like our brains will kind of add language in and make sense of it, which is just how we sort things. But it really is that subtle attunement that, as you're saying, is like from the heart, from the soul. It's like from the feeling body. At least for me, I think other people have other senses and other ways that they communicate. But I think it is like honoring those parts of us that are wildly tuned in. My dog, yeah, he has a lot of little dog thoughts and things, and they're different than human thoughts, but you can really feel that when you open to that. Their deep intelligence and deep knowing and their souls, and as you said, like their connection to God and spirit, and like the wisdom that they hold, the medicine that they hold, that they really have to share. And being in that space of like this animate world that feels like it's been, for some people, lost, and for others has always been there and always been known. And it just really does feel like this moment where there's more space for that to come into the field. I think a lot of people are using science to kind of articulate ancient wisdom now. It's like,
Mm.
these atoms do work in this way, and this is vibrating, and yeah, technically the plants are singing because they're doing this, whereas indigenous cultures and older traditions have always said these things. And it's funny to
Yeah.
me, like conversions, and I'm curious how it all unfolds. But ultimately, I think it's a really powerful moment to be here and to be alive and tapped in and tuned in and sharing these thoughts and medicines. You mentioned you touched on the whales. I would love to hear a little more about the whales and your work and relationship with them. This is a aspect of your realms that I don't know so much about and haven't experienced with you. But I would love to hear sort of how you found the whales, how they came to you, and how that part of your path unfolded.
Yeah. Yeah, the whales really first came to me through my voice and through song in this kind of like playful, joking way. I, at some point was just started making these like whale sounds, but it was very, light and just like, oh, these whale sounds. And then when I started working with a particular teacher, who was very connected to the whales and the dolphins, and the first retreat that I was in with her, I experienced a soul reclamation journey. So it was literally this part of myself that had been frozen off, fractured off from my being that I brought home. And in the integration of that, I felt the whales come through. And in like this, I experienced them a lot and commune with them a lot in the spirit field. So it's like I feel their presence in different ways. I'm also very sensory, body feeling oriented, though sometimes it is also like visual seeing them. But yeah, I felt their presence and them come through, and they were basically like, "Hey, we want to work with you." You're
Mm.
like, "This is medicine." Like this whale sound is medicine. And they told me to sing to the wombs. They wanted me to sing to the wombs. And it all felt, it like landed and just felt so resonant when that came through. But then in the integration of that, there was part of me that was like, what the heck does that mean? Like I
Yeah.
had no idea really. And it was about a year that I had went to the ocean and like made offerings to them and tried to sing with them a little bit, but it just wasn't, nothing much came through of it. I didn't really know how to connect. And then yeah, a year later I was on the big island of Hawaii, and I was there for a month in January during whale season. So the humpback whales, which are the whales that I'm most connected to, they come to the island and they're all around the island and they come to give birth to their babies. So they were, yeah, very strong presence. And I kind of walked through, it felt like I walked through something into more acceptance of my psychic sight and my gifts, and
Mm.
like stepping into it more, being there were some parts of me that were, I think, afraid. So I stepped into that more, and the whale songs started to come through more strongly. I started to let that flow through my voice. And essentially, yeah, there were just these whale songs that started coming out of me that were very powerful. These deep bellowing tones of the ocean, of the whales. And when I started, it's like I would feel them. I would feel their call and their energy, and I would say yes. It was very edgy for me. It was very uncomfortable for me at times, but I would say yes, and I would sing with them, is what it felt like. And so I would share this like in women's spaces and group spaces, and people would have these really profound experiences, like be like, oh my gosh, that touched me so deeply. Like that moved something in me, that cleared something in me. It was, yeah, it felt like this gift opening, and this really did, singing with them, singing these songs would bring their presence into a space, It's like whales in the house. It's like the whale frequencies would come in, and it was like, whoa, everybody was like, whoa, okay, that was the whales. It was kind of a wild experience, and so yeah, there were about 2 years where I was nomadic, so, in all different kinds of groups and spaces and places, and would be sharing these whale songs, and in the process was, yeah, it's where I felt like they were initiating me through this, like as I was sharing, I was learning more about it, about them, communing with their energy, coming into, yeah, letting myself be heard, right? Letting myself take up space, letting that part of me take up space. And yeah, eventually I ended up living on the Big Island for about a year and a half, and I got to commune with them really deeply and just felt them so fully as my family, as, yeah, the humpback whale tribes as just part of my soul family. Yeah, as part of this whale medicine that I carry and I'm still very much in communion with and learning from. Like they would teach me a lot about the waters and about different energetics. And yeah, the past 2, 3 or so years, I've been in a like rebirthing. It's been longer than I expected, but kind of a rebirthing with them of, yeah, it's felt like really anchoring and strengthening my own root, my own womb, my own like base and foundation to be able to really in integrity bring through their medicine. And I definitely envision creating more spaces to share their medicine through sound journeys and these oceanic whale sound journeys. But I've kind of felt like I've just been strengthening and widening my base. Like they're very, they're big and wide and deep, and just as a particular embodiment to hold that and share that.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, such a beautiful example to sort of what we were speaking of earlier of like being open and also trusting to our own, the things that are coming through, those psychic abilities, those knowings that are very much beyond the realm that we've sort of been raised in this timeline of what's possible and what's real and what's true, and going into, to me, ultimately, like those deeper realms that are very much alive, but they're subtle and they require a certain ability to hear and to listen and to, yeah, be
Mhm.
sort of the channel that you are for this medicine to come through, and for that to be something that, yeah, your soul is prepared to work with. And I'm sure so much there for you and for all of us in your working with this medicine. And it sounds like something that's deepening and developing and coming through. But I feel like that's such a beautiful experience, an example of just our potential as humans, and communing with the animals and communing with the frequencies and the subtle layers of life on earth, and what is really for us, and our own healing potential, our own yeah, just this felt sense of existence sort of running through us that wants to just be alive and be experienced and not be contained,
Mm.
to just really come through and guiding us on our path. Like it sounds that through this sort of whale awakening, you ended up like in the right place at the right time to learn that medicine in that first iteration of it. I'm sure it's going to be something that just continues. And it sounds like that, yeah, that capacity that it built within you to be able to hold that, to be able to share that, to have that come through and build and grow and also affect others and heal others and penetrate their realms and what's probably possible for them too.
Yeah, I'm feeling so much in it like that. The reciprocity that I think is too available with the animal realms of like how, yeah, they want to support us. You know, they want to support us in our awakening and our embodiment and our coming into parts of our medicine, you know, and service. And also, and through that, it's also like they want us to help them. Like they also need help and are like, "Hey, this is what's happening to the waters, like, this is what's happening to the humans," and it's like they need us to come into those powers and that reciprocity and that medicine to also support them
Yeah.
that we share this earth with.
That's so beautiful. It really helps us to, yeah, just remember like the inherent connection we all have on this planet, like spiritually and physically, of all of us being on the earth and resourced by her in so many ways. And that, again, like that right relationship that has been broken and has been not in right relationship for some time. And this call to return to that again and really, really care for the earth and all of her beautiful resources and all of her beautiful creatures. And yeah, being able to sort of like use our words and our human voices if we do have that ability to hear the whales and to be tuned into what they have to say and what they need and how to support them. Because, yeah, we do have a lot of power as these two legged creatures appear on the land.
Mhm. Yeah, that's so beautifully said, feel that.
Yeah, me too. I feel like there's so many other pieces that we can go into, but I also want to be respectful of our time and our container. And yeah, I'm so grateful for this conversation and just really feeling this deeper medicine that you carry that feels really potent and really needed in this moment. So I'm just so grateful for you to share some of that with us and in this space of this really deeper listening that I think I'm really being called to, of what's possible and what's true on those subtle levels of hearing the plants and hearing the animals and returning to that right relationship, returning to that reciprocity. And it feels like just being in your presence, it feels so there and so simple and so true. And it's always
Mm.
available for us to return to. So thank you for your embodiment and for sharing that.
Yeah, I'm also just feeling so grateful for this communion and our conversation, and it feels like it just flew by. That just flowed. But yeah, I love speaking about this and speaking about the animals. Like it feels so good in my heart just to talk about this and
Yeah,
yeah, share about these things and hear from you about some of it. And yeah, I'm very, very grateful.
thank you. Yes, me too. Yeah, we'll have to do round two with some of the other work that you do because it's vast and there's a lot of pieces. But yeah, I guess just a final question of sort of what are you working with right now? What are you excited about? What are you moving toward and perhaps birthing or bringing into the world or tending to, and how could people work with you or come into your sphere?
Yeah. So, a really big theme for me right now is anchoring my home in Scotland. I've been kind of coming back and forth the past 2 or so years. And yeah, really wanting to be here more and anchor my home here. And that just feels really nourishing and exciting and like yeah, starting to offer things here more. But also, yeah, I've been very much in the breast health realms the past year or so. I have a whole space called Breast Health Sanctuary. That's the Instagram breast.health.sanctuary. And then it's Bless Our Breasts website. And yeah, that's like a whole realm of passion and specialty of mine that has just wanted a lot of my attention to kind of anchor and yeah, open. So a lot of my energy has been focused on that recently, which has been, yeah, really beautiful and nourishing and a lot of heart, breast, feminine
Mm.
embodiment energy. And I'm definitely feeling this year. So, something really fun in True Sky astrology, which is the kind of astrology that I follow. My birth sun is in Cetus. It's at the throat of Cetus, which is the whale constellation. So it's actually like the realm of the sky with Aries. It's actually Aries and Cetus. So it's like the ram and the whale.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, my son is at the throat of the whale, and
Mm.
my birthday is at the end of April this year. And I'm feeling a like whale rebirthing this
Mm.
year within the Cetus portal in the sky, which will be, yeah, the end of April, early May. So yeah, I hope to begin sharing more of my voice and of my song and of the whale songs and yeah, the messages from the whales.
So beautiful. Yeah, that feels really, really resonant of where you're at and what's coming through. And yes, the breast health we didn't get into. Perhaps we'll have to do a round two on all of that at some point, but there's so much to cover.
Yeah.
So we played with the animals today.
Yeah. And actually, I will share one more thing. I'm just remembering, just in case anyone who listens might be like, "Ooh, that's my dear sister Audrey and I are offering a 8-week dieta with Amanita. It's called Miraculous Joy Dieta. Um, and it's really focused. I'm going to be guiding making rattle. So guiding each woman to make her own medicine rattle. That's part of the dieta and communion, and it's a lot around song and like singing with the plants and with the animals and
Beautiful.
yeah.
Incredible. I will put links and ways to find you and all of your things so that everyone can tune in. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful.
Yay, me too.
Yeah.